I'm Marcella Riddick.
I'm Stevie Gray.
Thanks for being on the road with us today.
This is Walter.
Oh yes, he's back there today. It's been a little toasty outside.
It is 98 degrees. We are driving through Mojave National Preserve at the edge of California and Nevada.
Which has been a super cool drive to get through, although it was about 100 degrees when we pulled through Vegas and got lunch. So it's been, a little toastier than normal.
And we're doing this episode in a little bit of desperation because we are both pretty tired, and we've found that doing this podcast kind of makes time disappear.
Goes a little faster.
Yeah. Oh. Bruh. The America the Beautiful
I know.
Always
there.
Sneaky appearance.
Did we ever check to see if it was in the shot?
It was.
Okay. It's okay.
Like casually.
So, on the list of topics for today, what did you want to start with?
I don't know.
Well, we were driving back in. This is our 19th day on the road.
Yes.
We are driving home tomorrow, which is super weird.
Spending the night in Joshua Tree on our way there right now.
Yeah, and we had changed our mind about that route because I think we wanted something a little bit closer to home, both in distance and in heart, as our last national park. And so yesterday we hit our 9th and 10th national park, which is absolutely wild.
We went to Bryce, and then there was a rock slide in Zion, so we couldn't go in yesterday, but we got the map. We stayed in Hurricane, had some BLM land.
Super beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super
By
awesome.
the Gooseberry Mesa, saw an incredible sunset, some stars, hung out,
The
had a
sunset
fire.
this morning was incredible, and we got up early and we just went for it.
Yeah, and we saw Zion.
Yes, so we saw Zion, but we didn't really see the Zion-y part of Zion, which was super interesting. And so for those who have been to Zion, you might already know this. For those who haven't been to Zion or you're inspired by Stevie and I to go see national parks, Zion has one major strip where you have to take a bus through. And so it's called the Zion Scenic Drive, and you can only take a bus. Pets aren't allowed. And it's one basically straight line that goes up and back through the core part of the park. But when you look at Zion on a map, that core part that they're telling you is only this bitty corner of the massive park itself. And so what we did this morning was drive through a longer road and go through the mountains and see the other forests. And so we woke up thinking we were going to see rocks.
Right here.
Are we turning?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. We woke up this morning thinking we were going to see rocks, and we saw a whole other alpine forest filled with the biggest aspens I've ever seen, and just, it was phenomenal.
Saw some elk/YPT.
YPT.
It was a really great time, and like Marcel said, we didn't really get to see like the Zion that's on all the pictures, and so I'm sure we'll go back. But it was interesting to find that it was one of the least drivable national parks in terms of trying to go see. Like, we saw Bryce yesterday, and you can really see all of the big views of Bryce just by driving on the main roads that they have.
Though, I think Bryce was really one of the first ones where I was like, dang, I really want to be hiking up in this.
Yep. And it's tough because we have the dog, and so you got to kind of pick your adventure wisely if you have like an infant or a dog equivalent in the car with you. But so far, most of the national parks we've been to are very, very drivable. Mm-hmm. And so if you just are going for the distance, you can definitely see quite a bit, which is exciting to know. But there's definitely a lot more things to do in each park.
But like we said, for every national park, we can't wait to go back because we know the things that we want to do the next time.
Yep.
So it has been a beautiful morning. We actually almost missed one of the coolest parts. I don't know if we ever asked them how to pronounce it, but on the west end of Zion, there is Kolob? No, Kolob? The canyon.
The canyon that we saw this morning.
So there's three main entrances. There's a really historic tunnel on the east side, and that's where the rock slide was. There's the south entrance, which is the main entrance, and then the west entrance is not really an entrance. It's just
more of a visitor center for the canyon.
For the canyon itself, and so Kolob Canyon, we'll go with that. We almost missed. We pulled up to the visitor center to see if there was another map and something else to check out, and I was like, I don't know, like maybe we should just get on the road to get to Joshua Tree. And the guy was like, you gotta go, it's only 5 miles up. And it was one of the most phenomenal stretches of 5 miles we've had on this entire trip.
Totally
and so
worth it.
if you're just driving up the 15th going somewhere, stop in Kolob Canyon. I don't think there'll be a time. We that drive without stopping there again.
100%.
Very quick. And there's also trails. No dogs, but
No dogs.
the trails are really cool. I see us hiking up in there one of these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a nice surprise this morning because we didn't really know what to expect. And then he was like, "You gotta go," and we're like, "Okay, we gotta go."
So it being day 19,
Mm-hmm.
how are you feeling about the trip ending?
I think this was the first day I felt really tired, and I think it might have just been all of our plans changing last night.
Yeah.
But I think this is the first day I'm feeling tired, so I'm excited to go to Joshua Tree and be somewhere familiar to rest. We're gonna get there in 2 hours, something like that.
Want some time to hang out in the sun,
Yeah.
be hot,
Yes.
and then it'll reach the low of 66 at 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be 80 at 10 p.m. tonight.
And last night it was already crazy because we could sleep in shorts again.
Yep. And so it's fitting because we started this trip in a desert and we're ending it in a desert. So it's nice that the beginning and end kind of rhyme in a way.
And 3 days ago we were in Rocky?
Yep.
That's wild.
And so on this trip, the highest temperature we've experienced now is 100 degrees.
100 degrees.
Lowest was 24.
Mm-hmm.
We made a list earlier of things that we...
All the numbers.
Probably talk about it more in the last one.
But I think one of my favorite things about today in that visitor center, we always try to go to visitor centers because there's always cool stuff, I think. Some of them are really boring and some of them are really nice and some of them are really need an update, but the people are really cool. And this morning, the energy of the folks at the Kolob Canyon Visitor Center was super, I feel like inspiring is a bad word. What's another adjective?
Exciting.
It was
They
exciting.
were excited
They
for
were
us.
excited for us, yeah.
They were like, you're going to see this awesome canyon, have so much fun.
They were
And I
like, you
was
see this
wow.
picture? That's what you're going to see. You got to go. And I really appreciated that push.
Yeah.
When we were in Mesa Verde. There
Mesa
you go.
Verde. I was
Mesa
like, what?
Verde. I was like, I mushed great dunes. And anyway, when we were in Mesa Verde, there was a woman who was thanking some of the park ranger volunteers. And it was so wholesome just for people to be grateful for the people that are there putting their time and effort into the national parks. And so I think on day 19, thinking about all the people that made it possible for us to visit 11 national parks in 20 days, super grateful for the system, even though we critique it a lot in its history.
A lot of the roads are closed.
A lot of the roads were
As we've
closed.
learned. If you're trying to hit a bunch of national parks, something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
You may not get to see everything you want to.
But so go with the flow. We
Yep.
figure the things out.
You'll find new things that you didn't know you wanted to see.
Like we got Cuban food last night because we got really stressed about the sun setting.
In
When we had to turn around.
where in Utah is it? What?
Kanab.
Kanab, Utah.
It was Havana Cubana. It's pretty solid.
Pretty good.
So you just go with the flow, find new things. It was a really good time. And so, yeah. But roads are closed. That's just the thing. A rock slide. So when we were going up to Zion and Bryce, we were debating whether we should do Zion first or Bryce first, blase. And we decided to go to Bryce first, just logistically. And literally 3 hours before we were going to Zion, this rock slide happened. And obviously we can't control a
And it
rock
blocked
slide.
the entrance to the park that was most logistically convenient for us to get into Zion from. So we were pulling up to Zion all excited to kind of wrap out the day in Zion. There's a
Mama
rock
Earth
slide.
doesn't care about our logistical plans.
No, not at all. But now we're here.
We had one of the questions of what natural disaster would you rather be? I don't know, if you were like a superhero, like what would your natural disaster be? And mine was an earthquake. What was yours?
I was going to say earthquake, but because that option was taken, I chose to be a meteorite.
Yeah.
Because I thought being an extinction level natural disaster would be way cooler.
Is it an earthquake?
I mean, if you can wipe out an entire planet in one go, that's pretty crazy.
I don't know, the tectonic
I still don't
plates.
quite understand the point of this question.
It's okay.
Marcella asked the question earlier, would you rather be dirt or a cloud? And I was like,
I still don't
I don't know.
understand what's wrong with that question. There's a lot of dirt and there's a lot of clouds. If you were to be like an omniscient being that was sentient in either the dirt or the clouds, what would you rather be?
being a sentient dirt or cloud sounds very...
Well, if you were dirt, you could look at clouds all day.
I mean, if I were a cloud, I could look at dirt all day.
There you go.
So, there you go.
We've had a lot of questions. So on day 19, we've started to run out of questions. So that's what we talk about.
Yeah, dirt or cloud.
But this stretch of road, so you can get to Joshua Tree pretty easily, in air quotes, from Las Vegas, but I didn't want to be on the 15 the whole time, and so we went down a different way and crossed over on this road junction thing, and it ended up being called Joshua Tree Highway, and it was just a whole stretch for, nearly 40 miles? That was just Joshua trees.
These are all Joshua trees right here.
I love Joshua trees, and so that was a really nice surprise. And going through it, we're looking down into Mojave, and I'm like, yo, this is going to be a really tough podcast because I feel like they're not going to be able to see anything. But look at the clouds, and look at the dirt, and look at the mountains, and the Joshua trees.
Gosh, they're endless.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So what else do you want to talk about?
Well, we could talk about tattoos and jump that transition.
Sure.
So I just got a tattoo. I actually just got a couple tattoos, but I just got a tattoo of a tree, and everybody asked me if it's a Joshua tree, which is
from a distance it kind of looks like a Joshua tree.
It's not a Joshua tree, but I've been fascinated by the generational reactions to my tattoos and people's thoughts and opinions on tattoos in the context of body autonomy and stuff. So I thought it'd be cool to talk about tattoos.
I've got some pretty big opinions on that.
Yeah, give me what's your hottest take on tattoos, Greg?
My hottest take on tattoos, and this is a very broad hot take. I guess most hot takes are pretty broad.
They're supposed to be.
But I feel like most tattoos are probably not the best long-term decision, depending on what age you get them, because personally, I know my interests change a lot. I like tattoos on other people. It's very hard for me to think of tattoos that I wouldn't dislike on my body like 40 years down the road. And a lot of people would say, who cares?
I literally say, who cares? And I think that's the dumbest hot take ever.
And that's totally fair. I have always just had a hard time comprehending putting a permanent, like, big image on your body as opposed to just, like, hanging up a poster of an image that you like a lot, or, like, saving a JPEG and, like, putting it on your phone wallpaper, where I'm like, I'm just so indecisive about most things that I'm like, how could I know for sure that, like, a week after I get this tattoo, I'm not going to hate it for the rest of my life? And so, we have one tiny tattoo, our matching ring finger tattoos from 2016, which basically serve as our engagement rings / wedding rings.
Yeah, we don't wear rings anymore.
We have engagement / whatever you want to call them rings, but we stopped wearing them because, one, Marcella hits her hand on a lot of things a lot of the time, and mine stopped fitting. So we stopped wearing them, and we're like, alright, these tattoos, why not just...
Yeah.
We don't really need to wear the rings anymore.
Whoa, are these burnt? I've never seen burnt Joshua trees.
Some of them,
Whoa, that's wild.
These are funky. It's like tall one. It's just...
Yeah, what?
Huh. But...
It's one side of the road is burnt, and one side is not burnt.
Yeah. That's really interesting, actually.
Anyway, Stevie's hot take on tattoos is dumb. And I
just can't think of things that I would permanently want on my body. If you want a tattoo, go for it. Sounds cool. I don't get it most of the time. I do think... Yeah. Oh, sorry. Last hot take. I think colorless tattoos are better than color tattoos. I think on human skin, just like classic black ink, 10 times cooler than like a bunch of different colors. Because I think it's just like, it doesn't look as good. Like the line work it's easier to like pick apart the quality of a tattoo if it's in color than if it's just black ink.
Also a bad take.
That's my hot take.
Also a bad take. Dude, I know I'm not supposed to be dissing your hot takes, but I completely disagree. And so obviously I have, 4 now? 1, 2, 3, 4 tattoos now.
Yeah.
Probably gonna get a bunch more. Because I freaking love tattoos as just an expression of being. I think some of my tattoos have a lot of meaning, some of my tattoos have no meaning, and some of my tattoos are just because I wanted a fucking tattoo. Man, I was doing so good.
Marcella is very passionate about tattoos.
Dude, I freaking love them. And so I actually, one of my last honors projects in undergrad was on the history of tattoos and the importance of tattoos in different communities of color, and how tattoos are historically one of the markers of oppression, and for different communities mean a lot of different things. And so I learned, I read this awful book. We don't need to talk about that book. That book was sad. There was this French dude who like came and did studies on Native American peoples and talked a lot about tattoos, and it was really gross. Don't recommend reading it. But it was really interesting to hear about how Native people have tattoos way back when and all the things and the history of Japanese tattoos. So I love the history of tattoos, one, and I think that in general it's a form of history that just got passed down, obviously, and been updated and all that good stuff. Talked about tattoo culture in LA and the history of gang culture in LA, and tattoos, also super interesting. The history of women in tattoos, of women not being able to get tattoos, and then equivalently fighting for tattoos, and how women of color were some of the first women to kind of break that gender stereotype and get inked. Super awesome stuff. I could tell you all the history of tattoos for days, but I think that just putting whatever the hell you want on your body because you want it on your body is super sick.
Do you think, and this is not necessarily a question that I've had, but just for the purpose of conversation, do you think that the more, now that tattoos are, I'd say, fairly popular with our age group, like tattoos, body autonomy is super important, and talking about the history of tattoos, now that tattoos are more widely accepted and still not close to being normalized, I think tattoos are still pretty taboo. Let me make sure we're going the right place. Keep going straight. Yep. And then we're going to turn left in 19 miles.
Okay.
So, now the tattoos are a lot more widely accepted than they used to be, but still not normalized, I'd say. Do you think that the amount of bad tattoos and meaningless tattoos has risen in our age group now that people are a lot more willing to just get themselves inked? Do you think that minimizes or...
It's a donkey!
Oh, nice.
I think that labeling tattoos as good and bad is inherently problematic. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
Let me tell you why. I think that at the end of the day, tattooing is an art, correct? Yeah. All the people doing tattoos are artists. Artists, one, always have to start somewhere, and artists, two, always have their own style. I think there is a line of quality of a tattoo.
Like, is there objectively good and bad art on someone's body permanently? Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not going to say good and bad. Okay. I'm going to say quality versus not quality.
Okay.
Because I think the designs that people put on their body, like, you are not one to, anybody is not one to judge.
It's fair.
I think that in terms of quality, you want to also have, like, a solid quality tattoo in terms of, like, health and sanitary things and wounds. But also comes privilege, comments, because I had the privilege to pay a lot of money for
tattoos are expensive.
Yeah, tattoos are really expensive. And my second tattoo was pretty expensive, but it was in this nice little private studio in Fort Collins, and it was just me and my mom, and so that experience isn't one that people can have. And so who am I going to tell if somebody is from a lower socioeconomic status and their mom isn't paying for their tattoo to go make sure that they have the highest quality tattoo to get the image that's meaningful to them? No, that's also dumb. To your question of is there going to be more bad tattoos, just because of quantity, yes. Like statistically, yes. So you asked me a dumb question first of all.
Damn, Marcella is
I know.
Going
I'm
for
coming.
blood today.
I'm coming for your neck today because I love tattoos.
Yeah.
And I think the history of tattoos is really awesome. And
I think where I stand is I respect tattoos.
You can.
I don't get them.
You don't have to.
And I don't get them. Like, I literally, this is probably going to be the only tattoo I ever get.
Which is so like weird. That. No, I'm going to have so many. I tried to get my sleeve. I was trying to prep my sleeve.
I like tattoos that flow. I don't like when people get, like, a tattoo, like, tattoos on completely opposite ends of their bodies. It just, like, I feel like
it's so weird.
I don't know. I'm like someone that thinks if there's, like, a flow, like a sleeve, and it's all kind of the same style, if it's all, like, black ink, like, I'm a big fan of, like, those kinds of tattoos and that kind of flow. If you're using your body as a canvas, I feel like having the art flow in a way that makes sense is really cool. A dune?
What is that?
That is a dune. It's a big pile of sand.
I'm gonna call out Stevie for sounding like a freaking boomer. And I think that let's use tattoos as a transition to talk about generational opinions, because I think, like you said,
I do have a more old school opinion of tattoos.
Yes, and I think that most Gen Z, I would argue most millennials, but I don't really know, like, they're chill with tattoos. Nobody really cares anymore.
Yeah.
This is also asterisk the perspective of somebody who lives in LA, in the businesses and worlds that we navigate. Most people don't care about tattoos. I have a friend who's not allowed to show their tattoos at work, and so I guess in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and so everything's relative. So that's my little sidebar asterisk. But the generational perspective of tattoos is really interesting, and I know that my mom, I showed her my last tattoo, she was just like, I don't get it, Marcella, like, glad you enjoy it. Whereas,
we're not a very tattoo-friendly household.
Yeah, no, not at all. Whereas there's some, like, people get, like, banned from their household if they have tattoos. They're religiously, like, not allowed to be buried with their family when they have tattoos. So I think that I want to bring that kind of piece of the conversation in.
100%.
What generationally, what does that mean?
We're at a very pivotal point in a lot of things generationally, I'd say, with how much has changed so quickly. We've talked about that before, but more talking about present day instead of talking about the big existential past to future things. Like talking about today, the 21st century, the 2020s. So much has changed in just since we've been born in 1998. It's pretty crazy in terms of how many things now can rock the boat in terms of generational opinion. There's a lot of topics that we could dive into, similarly to tattoos, that kind of have that same thing where it's like our age group feels so differently about something than people who were born not too long before us.
What's another one?
I would say, honestly, like meat consumption is a huge
that's a good one.
Because veganism and vegetarianism, when we were super young, were like made fun of.
Yeah.
And in the last 5 to 10 years, they're now very normal. Like you can go, the fact that you can go anywhere and there are not just vegetarian options, but specifically vegan options and gluten-free options, and they all have the little icons, that is so new.
I think the speed of that is also really important. And again, in places like LA, where there are tons of places that are strictly vegan and strictly vegetarian, the
alternative meat brands that exist now.
We saw a Beyond Meat truck. Where were we?
On our way to Bryce.
Was it?
Yeah, we were in Utah.
Yeah. We were really shooketh.
And so a lot of older generations have like this very like, I'm only going to eat the real stuff mentality. Like, I'm not going to drink oat milk. That's for sissies. I'm going to drink real milk straight from the cow. And I feel like from our age group's perspective, it's like you're drinking
another animal's milk.
You're drinking another animal's milk for its calf. That's kind of whack. Like what? But and not to say that we don't ever have dairy products. I feel like we're a little bit more what you'd call flexitarian, where we try to reduce consumption but don't.
But I don't eat meat every day.
Yeah, and like drinking milk like just straight from the glass.
No.
It's kind of strange to me. I don't know. It's like it's a good ingredient, but it's not like
That's a good one. I like that one.
That's something that I've noticed quite a bit.
Is there... So Stevie and I often identify as Zillenial because we feel really kind of in between the millennials and the Gen Z.
We're the oldest of the Gen Z.
We're the oldest of the Gen Z, which is inherently a different relationship, but a lot of our immediate elders, our siblings, not blood siblings, but the people I grew up with and consider my siblings are all millennials, right? And their perspectives in life experiences impact us in a way where I feel like we can't say we're completely Gen Z.
I would say that the older I've gotten, I think back when I was like a teen, I was like, yeah, I'm like a millennial.
Yeah.
Cool. I played the Nintendo 64 when I was a kid, and now at this age I feel more Gen Z than ever. And I think that has something to do with our age bracket finally being old enough to like go out and use the economy in different ways, and we can like influence a lot of different things in a lot of different ways right now. Our age group is kind of at like we're hitting our peak of like we're influencing trends and blah,
like
blah,
tattoos,
blah.
dude.
Yeah,
the amount of money that is being put into the tattoo industry because Gen Z is turning 18 and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna go get a tattoo.
Yeah. And so we're at that age where everyone's like, these dumb, idiot, lazy kids, because now we're able to like put a lot more influence and emphasis on certain aspects of society that we couldn't when we were like 12. And so I think that's part of why I feel more Gen Z than ever. It's like, okay, now we're actually being recognized as a demographic for the first time that actually like matters to people.
But when we hang out with people who are like 4 years younger than us, I feel
it's quite strange.
So out of the loop.
I mean, to put it in a little bit more into perspective, like I think that has a lot to do with social media technology, just all of the access to information and the way it's used in younger generations nowadays. Like when we were in middle school, Their smartphones were just being introduced, which still dates us. We're still obviously young, but that change and how that influenced school is huge.
Because
like having an iPhone in elementary school sounds awful. Like having access to instant information like that at that young of an age, that does not sound very cool to me. And I think even just that 4-year difference between us and whoever's younger than us completely impacts your entire experience as you're developing as a child, which is crazy to think about.
Childhood development aside, or I guess this is childhood development, when thinking about social media, I think we don't love, I'm saying we because we've talked about it, but we don't love social media. We're on Instagram-ish.
I've muted just about everybody on my Instagram, so all I see is like whales and plants.
Cool. So Stevie doesn't actually use social media.
I open Instagram, I go, oh, right, I muted everything, so I don't do this, and then I close it.
We're on Facebook so that our adult friends can keep tabs.
Facebook is a Rolodex for like everyone from middle school to your oldest family members.
We're not on TikTok, but we keep getting bugged too.
I've heard TikTok described as digital opiates, and I don't want to understand what that means, so I'm not going to get TikTok.
Yeah. But even from a business perspective, people were saying, Marcella, Stevie, like, y'all are going on this big road trip. Like, why don't you get on TikTok and get those views?
Put this podcast on TikTok.
I don't know, friends. I don't know if that's what I want to do. We said maybe we'll try a reel, and if our reels are half decent and not look like millennials trying to do TikToks.
But does anybody use reels? Like Instagram reels?
I think people put TikToks on reels.
I guess, like bite-sized content.
Anyway, we don't know what to do with social media, and it's one of those things where it's what is that word? What was it called? Like a mandatory evil or something like that?
Oh, a necessary evil?
Necessary evil, thank you.
It's something, now you have to use social media if you want to be present in modern society, unfortunately.
Is that true?
I think so.
Well, let's dive into this. Let's converse.
Okay, because I think I've had a couple friends along the way. That is definitely a lost end. Had a lot of friends that are a little bit more old school, and they're like, phones are dumb, I'm not going to get a phone, or I'm not going to use these apps. And I'm like, fine, you can say that, but the world's never going back to the time before social media.
True.
In order to participate in the discourse of our modern age, participate economically, and just know what's in the know, you kind of need to participate in social media and all this stuff. You don't have to do it in the same way that everyone else is doing it, but if you completely disconnect yourself from all of those platforms, you're not really participating in modern society. And that could be fine. Maybe you don't want to do that, but I kind of want to know what's happening in like the time period that I'm living in. And so for me, I do feel like it's that necessary evil. I think a lot of it is, I think it's kind of like we didn't set enough parameters for what social media and the modern internet needed to be. And so it was kind of just the Wild West in the early 2000s that we kind of lost control of it. And now we're living with those consequences. Well, so that's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Something like, I didn't get my Facebook until I was in high school. It's kind of similar where like I didn't play video games, and I feel like my social media ineptitude shows because I was late in the game.
That's fair.
Or late in the game in terms of the age at which I started social media. However, the toll social media has taken on my mental health would probably have been significantly worse than it already was.
And imagine you were like 9 when you started using Instagram. Like, what does that do to your perception of the world?
I don't know. I don't know what the middle ground is, but I think that there is a need to continue to build relationships that aren't on social media. And I think that's very difficult. I mean, adult friendships are hard.
Yeah. And social media is one of the easiest ways to keep in contact with people that you may have only spent like 4 months with on a program, like semester T. And it's like, okay, I can kind of keep tabs on everyone, all the people that I met and what they're doing, but I don't have to feel this like inherent pressure to like, let's all get together every 6 months or something. It's a lot more convenient to keep those kinds of relationships alive without having to physically move yourself to a bunch of different places, even though we're pretty comfortable physically moving ourselves to a bunch of different places.
Do you remember when, I found this picture, and it was talking about all of the different words for friendship in, I'm trying to remember what language it was. I think it might have been Arabic. And it was it was a discussion about how in the English language, friend is usually a pretty big umbrella term that we use for relationships with our peers, whereas the spectrum of which relationships can occur and the different purposes that they can serve in your life vary a little bit. And so when you say friend, obviously for us in our culture that means something very different than in other cultures where that range is a little bit more prevalent. So I'm curious, one, about your thoughts on that and how it relates to social media, because when you have stuff like, oh, do you follow me back, or oh, are we friends on Facebook, or it was a huge deal when Stevie and I were Facebook official with our relationship, and like what does the spectrum of friendship look like, and how does it change, particularly in our culture when we're talking about social media?
For me, the thing that made the biggest impact on how you manage and relate to others as friends or close friends was Snapchat.
Ooh, interesting.
Snapchat was the first time where, like, I think it was a little bit more closed than something like Facebook and
but
something like Instagram.
But at the same time, like, people could see your close friends, right?
On Snapchat?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I thought
in the old days,
yeah,
when it was first prevalent and before it kind of became as this, now everybody, I don't use Snapchat anymore, but it seems like a lot more people in different demographics have Snapchat.
I'm sorry, finish your thought, I'm sorry.
Point being, I feel like Snapchat was the first time where it would, like, I really only used it to talk to people that were, like, directly close to me and, like, send dumb things, or, like, the idea of having a story on your social media basically came from Snapchat.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's what I'm doing today, and the only people that can see what I'm really doing are, like, this really specific group of people that are on my Snapchat.
Yeah.
Whereas now with Instagram and stuff, people are putting their entire day and broadcasting it to literally anyone that follows them.
But there's close friends on Instagram still.
There are close friends on Instagram, which is basically turned Instagram into Snapchat 2.0, which is why I don't use Snapchat anymore. But Facebook then just became a giant, as I said, Rolodex. It's like, here is my, like, encyclopedia of friends and family members, that if I ever need to contact someone, I don't have their direct phone number, I'll go on Facebook and send them a message.
But I have like
1,000
friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't even know what half of those people are doing nowadays.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's not really the point of Facebook anymore. Like, I don't go on Facebook, but when I do go on Facebook, I immediately want to get off it, because I'm like, I don't want to know all this stuff that people are talking about on here. It's nice to just have everyone organized, and here are all the people in my life that I might need to contact if I want to. Yeah. And then Instagram is the second layer of that. Like, here's the people that, like, Instagram has become more of a business tool now. And so Instagram is like, here is, like, my nicely formed persona or whatever. Or so it seems. It seems like Instagram is where you broadcast, like, a completely false version of yourself from an outsider that doesn't really understand the whole point of it. And then something like Snapchat was like, here is how I, like, directly share dumb stuff with my close friends. And that's just kind of how, at least somebody that has experienced these different platforms in the last decade, that's how I've perceived them. But I feel like I'm faster and faster getting out of the loop of all of their purposes.
Mojave National Reserve Visitor Center.
Oh, we're turning at 500 feet.
To go to Baker?
To go to the
those are Kelso Dunes. We're turning left. You said right.
I said left.
We're going left?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going towards Kelso Dunes.
Kelso Dunes. Okay.
I can see the ocean on my map now.
What? Really?
Yeah. I mean, I have it pretty zoomed out.
I miss the ocean, y'all.
Yeah, we haven't seen the ocean. We haven't seen the ocean in a sec.
I'm a big ocean fiend.
I mean,
we passed that train that cut us off, and it was about to come back.
We did it.
We did it.
Wow. So here are the Kelso Dunes.
You didn't know we were going through these.
No, not at all. Pretty cool.
I hope that the friends can see the Kelso Dunes on this image.
Could at one point. If not now.
We'll see.
But
where were we? Are we done with social media?
Yeah, we have 6 minutes. Let's throw that one out the window.
Social media, there's good things, there's bad things. The long-term effects of social media are going to continue to reveal interesting things about our society.
Yes. We all know what they've done politically. We don't need to go into that.
Yeah.
But all the other things.
Oh my god, yeah, I forgot about Elon buying Twitter. That's a time capsule. Had to mention that just for the history records.
Sure.
That was like 3 weeks ago.
I don't think it ever officially happened.
What?
Yeah, there's all this dumb crap that like, just check the news like once a month for stuff like that, because the day-by-day news is all.
Okay, well, I was wrong.
Yeah.
What else do you want to talk about?
We got 5 minutes.
I think generational conversations are fascinating, particularly in this space of social impact. And approaches to social impact, I think, vary vastly generationally. And so it's super interesting because my program, for example, ranged from people who were finishing their undergrad degrees, the younger end of the spectrum, to have had full careers and are now pivoting into a more social impact focused career later in life. And so that breadth led to a lot of different opinions on what social impact looked like from a generational perspective, which led to a lot of really good dialogue. And so I think my point of that little bitty rant was that I think having dialogue with people across generations is still really important to get multiple perspectives, just like 100%. Any other identity.
And to some extent, generational brackets are made up.
Fake, just like
They're
borders.
Completely fake. It's like being a Gen Z and being a millennial and being a Gen X and being a boomer.
The years are going to shift and life events shift things.
Half of it is all crap made up for us to all be angry at each other some more and be like, these dumb kids, and point the finger at the next generation, as I'm sure our age group will do to...
It's up to you guys, Stevie. You're going to fix everything.
Yeah, and then there's that aspect of it where it's like there are very, very clear lines, like in terms of what people believe generationally.
Yes.
And those affect how we do everything on this planet right now. And so there is kind of a mentality right now that like our age group is going to fix all the problems that were created by generations past. And I hope that we don't pass that mindset on to the next generation and say, okay, Gen Z didn't solve most of the stuff. You guys got this.
That's because Gen Z is like not going to have a lot of kids.
That's fair. Yeah, Gen Z is not having any kids. But there are aspects of generationalism like that are, I think, very problematic. Where it's like, okay, let's just look to the new generation to kind of like fix everything that we don't like about what's going on right now. Or you blame the new generation for the things that are going on right now. Yeah. You raised us, dude. Like, you don't like what's going on like this. We didn't make this stuff. We were just born into it.
And then looking at the life events that impact the different generations, where it's like, oh man, like, yes, these are fake, but yes, these are very real.
Yeah, there are defining moments that kind of put some clear lines on age brackets to some extent. And that influences culture and beliefs and all of the things. It's very real and it's very fake.
Shout out to the hippies.
Shout out to the hippies.
The counterculture generation has impacted our lives very much.
Yeah, I think there is kind of, especially with the pandemic, there's a bit of a resurgence of kind of counterculturalism happening right now that is exciting and scary at the same time. I think back in the early 2000s as kids and mid-2000s in high school and whatnot, it was always interesting to look back on like the 60s and the peace love era. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like,
they were like, no, like people were actually... Like...
Yeah, it was like a very turbulent time and there were a lot of bad things happening, and that was a very small subsect of what was like going on. And now I can see that in real life today.
Yeah,
it's like, oh,
truly.
I get it. Okay, this makes a lot more sense. It wasn't just some dudes like hugging trees and like dropping acid.
I'll do a shout out to our namesake, and I don't know if we actually ever talked about that. So On the Road, what we decided to call this podcast, is actually a book about a group of dudes who write to each other in the midst of that generation of what it meant to be gay in the 60s and what it meant to find yourself and what it meant to travel across the country and how it impacts relationships and how you keep relationships and a lot of the things that we ended up talking about inadvertently. Yeah. So we can shout out our namesake as a closure to this episode.
Yeah, perfect timing too. We got like 20 seconds.
Thanks for being on the road with us today.
Have a great day. Do your best.
You got this.
Eat your favorite food.
And kiss a dog.
Kiss a dog.